Hey everyone, and welcome to the Room 11 podcast, where I talk to everyday people about the moments that shape us grief, resilience, and everything in between. Today's guest is someone I deeply admire, not just for what she's done, but for the way she's carried her story. Michelle McCranor is a mother, a runner, and an advocate for stillbirth awareness. In 2001, Michelle's daughter Celeste was born still, and life changed forever. Since then, Michelle has faced grief, depression, and uncertainty, and somehow she's found a way to keep moving. Literally. What started as a few Sunday 5Ks eventually turned into long trail runs and then ultra marathons, including a 100-kilometer race through the Blue Mountains twice. She runs for her own healing, but also for something much bigger. For parents who never got to bring their babies home. For the families who carry this silence. And for Celeste. Michelle and I first connected last year while we were both doing endurance challenges of our own to raise awareness of stillbirth. I had the honour of speaking at a fundraising gala for her campaign, and I knew back then this was a conversation I really wanted to have. In this episode, we talk about grief, we talk about running, we talk about resilience, and the upcoming release of their documentary, Her Name Is Celeste. It captures all of it. Michelle is honest, thoughtful, and quietly powerful, and I'm grateful to share her story with you today. Let's get into it. Well, thanks for jumping on. It's been one of those long time coming sort of things that I've been wanting to do, just to try and learn more about how other people sort of manage their sort of grief and their
Yep.
loss, and how to sort of work their way through that. And I thought you would be the perfect person to speak to, especially for episode 1, just because of all the stuff that you've been doing and the stuff that you've done, and
Yep.
just the grit and resilience that you've shown, especially in the past 12 months. Yeah, so I thought I'd just start off, just saying thanks for coming. And I was trying to think uh, what do you remember? When did we first connect? Was it probably like start of last year?
Yeah, I think it was, it would have been probably early on last year when I don't know, probably just through Instagram, wasn't it? I think when you
Mm.
start following those same groups, in the stillbirth community, and then I think you popped up, but also I think maybe through the Stillbirth Foundation.
Yeah.
I,
I think they may
I
have
think
been sharing you started your training. You started your training
yes,
fairly early.
yeah, and I think probably that connection through the Stillbirth Foundation. And then
Mm.
we just linked up
Yeah. I think it's your
and
I think
spurred each
because
other on. You
yeah.
were doing your daily 6K and I was training.
Yeah, I'd like you honestly kept me motivated a lot throughout last year, during my 6K a day runs, seeing that you were still getting after it. You would like by the end of it, you were doing more kilometers than me a week, for sure.
Yeah, well, I think we've sort of motivated each other. It's that get through that. I think it helps when you see someone else getting up every day, doing that same thing every day, running. Well, in our
Yeah,
case, running. You're getting up
yeah.
and you've just got to get up and do it again, regardless of how you feel, because there's
Mm.
an end goal at sight. So yeah, I think we both did well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so what is it now what's driving you to keep going now that the run is complete?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously I run everything I've ever done in raising awareness for stillbirth or fundraising is all to do with running, because that's something that I've used to manage my depression over the years. So I think going forward, anything I ever do is going to revolve around some sort of running thing.
Mm.
But through last year, we were also making a documentary with not just the run, but our goal was to have it purely based on raising awareness for people that aren't in our community. So, there's a lot being done for people that already are aware of stillbirth, but for Tim and I, our goal was to educate people to hopefully never become part of that community, but getting to the people that are untouched by it and know nothing about it. So our whole focus with the documentary was to be able to raise some awareness. So we're at that stage now. We're nearly ready to release. The final touches are being done with that, so it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait.
To release that on June here in June the 11th in Glenelg. So currently, I guess since the run finished, all our focus has been on the finishing touches for that. And then I sort of brainstorming other ideas of what's next. And, there's always stuff, probably like yourself, things that you think, oh, this would be a good idea. And then some of them probably are a bit not a good idea. And then others I'm just working through. But, we have a lot of stuff going on that we want to do. And I guess like yourself too, some of it can get pretty frustrating because, you do often quite feel people aren't listening still. And
Yeah. You're
it's
trying
like,
to do trying to get the message out there as much as you can, and it's like hitting a brick wall like I think
yeah,
for those that are probably seeing us for the first time may not know that. So we connected through the running that we were doing last year.
yeah,
But the purpose of our running was to raise awareness of stillbirth because we have both been affected by that through the loss of Celeste and the loss of my daughter Billy. And I think if you're comfortable, is sharing your story about Celeste and that period of your life.
yeah, sure. It's I will say it probably took me 19 years to be able to come to this point where I can feel not brave, but just have the energy and the strength to talk about it.
Mm.
Because she'll be turning 24. She would have been in August this year, and it's back then, there really was not a lot going on in that space. So I think, we've stayed quiet for a long time purely because of that, because we just didn't know what we should talk about and what we shouldn't. So,
Mm.
um,
The
so
stigma would
yeah,
have been a lot more. There would have been a lot more stigma around it than there is
yeah,
today.
and
I'm
and
imagining.
and even just like you have a funeral and yes, your friends come, but they didn't totally get it. Like they didn't totally, like everybody else's life went back to normal, and we sort of
Mm.
suffered in silence for a lot of years. And people, because Tim and I are pretty positive people, and we were running a business at the time and all different sorts of things. It's people just think that you've gotten over it. So yeah, but Celeste was stillborn August the 9th in 2001, and I had a blood clotting issue, which caused slow growth and wasn't picked up till obviously quite late. Had a few different types of interventions that could possibly help, like steroid injections and things that they could do back then to try and hopefully help, and a lot of bed rest in hospital. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. And we, I guess now looking back, I can say I learned a lot over the past 12 to 18 months going around the country, talking to other bereaved parents and their experiences. And the one thing that stood out to me, which we probably didn't speak about at the time, was the fact we didn't get to hold our daughter. So it was pretty much the room was quiet. Our daughter was taken away, and I have a lot of blank patches from that because they dosed me up on drugs at the time. I don't know what they were, but I can't remember that far back. But so I had a lot of what I would call no emotion because that was dulled down for me. I remember my husband crying, and that is pretty much my most vivid memory of him at my bedside crying. And I probably, because of being dulled down, really didn't quite understand what was going on at the time. Later on, a midwife brought Celeste back to our room, and she just sort of plonked her on the bed. And this is how I describe it because this is how I visually can still see it, and this is how I felt. How it all happened was she just brought her along in this, I guess it's like a older version of a cuddle cot from back there. Basically plonked her on the bed, and that was it. And Tim and I had no idea what we should be doing. She said something about time, which obviously wasn't a long time. I think she was literally in our room for, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then that was it. Time was up, and she whizzed her away. And that was our experience of our time with our daughter. No holding, no. We did have an older midwife, so she was probably doing the old way of things, maybe, but.
I'm assuming they wouldn't have had a bereavement care team or anything like that.
No, and it was very. When I look back now, it's easy for me to say now because I'm actually a person that doesn't like to talk bad of people, but now I am a lot braver, and I'm quite angry over a few things as well. I thought she was quite cold actually, and whether that's her how she emotionally deals with things as a midwife, who knows? But basically, we missed out on holding our child. We have no photos of us with our child. The hospital took a couple of photos and gave us. So the next time we got to see her was at the funeral home when we had an open casket. And we probably feel quite ripped off actually that we didn't get to experience some things that I hear that other people have. But don't get me wrong, I know that still in some hospitals people still have that same awful experience that we had. So I think it's still hospitals are all run differently and they all have different processes in place. So I think it's still a bit of a lottery of where you may have your child. So
yeah, I think that's a good point. Because I think it's important that we talk about this because there are so many different experiences that parents have gone through throughout that entire process where they, I was talking to someone last week and they were talking about all these resources that they were given or that they were provided afterwards, and all they did was they knew what to ask and who to ask to get those. Whereas when we lost Billy, we had no idea. I didn't even know what stillbirth was until it happened, and I didn't know that there was all these different things that you could ask them to bring you and to give you, and we could ask for this sort of extra stuff, and so I think it's important to talk about it because then it lets other people know that if they are ever in those situations, that they have the ability to sort of advocate for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I feel like. I had an interesting discussion with one of my son's friends, and bearing in mind they're all 21, 22 years old and have been on this past 5-year journey with our family in raising funds and awareness. And one of them said to me last year that, he looked around the room with his mates and thought, well, possibly it could affect one of us going down the track. if you look at the statistics, he said, but, we're educated now, like we actually understand. So we know that we can speak up and ask the questions. So, to me, like, tick, my job is done. I'm educating people to have a voice to speak up if they're ever put in that scenario, or even have a voice if things aren't quite right in their pregnancy, like if they're not feeling comfortable and they want to ask, they realise that they can ask because they are aware of these other things. And I think, to me, that's what Tim and I are trying to do, educate those people that aren't yet, it's like going to school. We educate kids on things that, yes, they may recall that information later on in life, or some of it may go in the bin because they don't need it. So I think it's really important, because we were basically given pamphlets. I remember I was in hospital, and after we'd seen our daughter, we went home. I think it was the next day, and sent home with a couple of pamphlets, ring this number. A few days later, at being home, I really wasn't in a good place, and Tim rang the number to try and get some counselling or some help, and they didn't have anyone available. So then that was the one and only time that I tried to reach out in my, 23 years now, because, I guess I just thought, well, that's it. I've got to just get on with it now. And, at that point in time when I was probably could have spoken to someone and helped. And I feel like that is what then rolled into me suffering so much issues with my moods and depression and things like that. Possibly if I'd had that help early on, I wouldn't have gone through some of the things I've gone through since. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a big, like, having the resources there and knowing that you can. I think that the limited resources when it comes to things like this is a big issue. I think my wife and I, we went to counselling, free. It's like a free counselling service,
Yeah.
and that was a bit of a hit and miss. We would go there once a week after work, and we just sort of sat there because we didn't know what we needed to do to get better. We were going through emotions and feelings that we'd never experienced before, and we needed some sort of guidance, and we sort of went there, and they just wanted us to sort of debrief about our week,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it wasn't really going anywhere. And so we just sort of scrapped that, and then we sort of was like, okay, so we're stuck like this together, basically.
Yeah.
That's how it.
No, but that's how it is. And you're so right. I mean, and we're probably both fortunate in that point that, as partners, we have been able to stick together, because a lot of people that they can't stick together because they can't support each other. Like it's too hard. And, that's
The
one of the
stats
other issues of loss.
don't only the stats on couples staying together after a loss like that is, I think it increases by like 50% that they end
Yeah.
up separating because they're
Yeah.
just resentment builds up, or they don't
Yep.
communicate properly, and it just ends up breaking the whole
Yeah.
relationship down.
Yep. Yeah, correct. And I think, like bereavement care, there's so many aspects to it. So, depending on what your loss is, it's a whole range of things, isn't it? And I think for stillbirth, again, that's pretty complex, with a range of, why did it happen? Some people will never know why. Others get an answer. We probably semi had an answer in the fact, they link it back to the blood clotting and not being picked up early enough. And so therefore, her growth wasn't where it needed to be. So she wasn't the size by the time she came along, and things like that. So it's sort of, you sort of get an answer, but you sort of don't. But it's more than what some people get as well, So I think when it comes to bereavement counselling, we just don't have enough experienced people in that probably type of counselling. And it's not like you're going for couples counselling. You know,
Yeah.
you're at the worst, the deepest, you're in a pit basically. And yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't like to be the counsellor actually, because I think it's a pretty hard job. But I guess the good ones are the ones that have probably been through it themselves.
Mm.
But I often wonder about that too, because we did interview, for the documentary, some lovely women that work in that space now, and I think, gosh, they're so strong to um, be able to do that as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing the work that's being done, and so many of them are in that space because they've experienced it,
Correct.
which is it's good, but it's also unfortunate that the reason why the the research and everything is moving forward and progressing is because all these people have lost the
Yeah.
same way that we have, and so they're in a way creating sort of it's given them a purpose and a drive to continue to push this even further, which is
Yeah.
something that needs to be done because I think the World Health Organization posted a few weeks back every 16 seconds there's a stillbirth in the
Yes,
world,
correct. I think
which is
it's
just
like
crazy.
1.9 million babies or something. It is crazy. And a part of our frustration, or even some of my anger, is that the people, obviously we've tried to reach out to governments and all this sort of stuff to get help, and I think they're just ticking their boxes. And it's I get I probably just get upset because it's like the people doing the hard work are the bereaved parents, basically. They're the ones pushing from all angles to try and get answers, do the research, raise money, do counselling. It's like, you're relying on this community of sufferers to fix the long-term issue, or fix the preventable, because we're just not getting the funding to, so we're
Yeah.
all trying, the money is coming from bereaved parents and their communities, basically.
Mm.
I've looked at, I've been fundraising for the last 5 years, and I think, how many more times can I ask my friends and family to cough up their pennies when you've got governments or even corporations? We've tried to reach out for workplace giving and things like that to be Stillbirth Foundation, to be a charity of choice, and they just all support the same charities. It's
Yeah.
quite
Is it
frustrating because
baby loss
everyone can
doesn't market
relate.
as
No,
well?
no, and it's not.
That's the
Yeah,
disappointing thing,
correct.
that it doesn't
It's
look good on it. Like they can't say, oh, we're donating or sponsoring cancer research.
yes,
Everyone will love the business for that. But if they're doing
yes, correct.
stillbirth, like
Yeah,
not enough people know about stillbirth to even sort of.
correct. And it's frustrating because, yeah, I think I really look at, um, it's like the CRE put in, for $19 million in the last budget,
Mm.
and got absolutely zero. Now these, so we're not even prepared to fund programs that they've done the research on. So they've helped them with a bit of funding to get the research done. Now we've got these things we can implement, but we just don't have any funding. So again, we're relying on the bereaved community to come up with funding. So yeah,
Yeah.
I could bang on about that for a long time, but it's
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to be happening everywhere. Like that's the whole reason why I'm fundraising this year, because the the pregnancy after loss clinic at the women's hospital here in Melbourne, like they only started what last year, and then they ended up having their funding reduced. Oh, I think we've frozen. Are you back?
yeah, I know. All good. Yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep,
So I was just saying, like, so the Royal Women's Hospital here in Melbourne, like their funding has been cut. So this pregnancy after loss clinic can no longer operate at the capacity. So we were there. We spent um our time last year there because of our second daughter.
yes,
And
yeah,
if it wasn't for that clinic, she probably
yeah,
wouldn't be here because
yeah,
she was her that whole pregnancy was mirroring our pregnancy with Billy,
Billy, yep,
growth restricted, and all that sort of stuff. And if they didn't pick up, if we weren't going to that service and we weren't getting those extra scans and those extra checkups every few
yep,
weeks, that wouldn't have
yep,
been picked up. And the
yep,
fact that they're now reducing, they've cut the funding, that they no longer have midwives, they no longer have social workers at that service, just one of the doctors, and that doctor's only there because she's the director of the birth center, and
yeah,
this is her sort of project that she started.
yep, yep.
And I was like, that's just not acceptable. Like, you can't
No, it's not
let that die. Like, there's going to be so many people that are going to be missing out on that service that is
service.
needed. And yeah, it's just, and then yeah, like with
Yeah,
the CRE losing, like not getting the funding. And
mm,
then I was talking to the CRE in Utah, and like they're getting chopped to bits because of the Trump administration. It's just,
yeah. I know it's
yeah.
I just don't. It's that's the frustrating side of trying to trying to make things better for the future. So, it's not about, for Tim and I, certainly we say we're trying to raise that awareness for the future and get these things in place to save those preventable stillbirths. And that's purely through awareness. A lot of this stuff
Mm.
is purely just through with the Safer Baby Bundle and things like that. And I've always said my big goal is to get that Safer Baby Bundle up on, like all social media, free to air TV adverts, like the old adverts. Currently we've had this RSV advert on running for about 12 months now that the government have paid for. And I'm sorry, but stillbirth is more of a crisis than that. And it's just not, it deserves the attention and the recognition. But I don't know, yeah, I think, I mean, you're right. It's not something that people are comfortable in talking about. But I also believe too that as a community, we, and I'm talking like the foundation and still like all the stillbirth community, the charities that are trying to help. I just don't think we push enough. Like, I don't think we get angry enough because we're dealing with the topic that we're dealing with. So I think as a community, we don't push enough, and we try to be too polite, I think,
Yeah, I think
so
I think you're right. And I think it's also that from a lot of the stillbirth centric and baby loss centric sort of groups and communities, they're reaching out to people that have already lost.
yes,
They're not
correct.
expanding out to
Yeah,
groups that don't want to hear us talking about it because it
yeah,
makes them uncomfortable. They don't like to
yes,
talk about it. And that's why we need to talk about it with them, because the more we
correct,
talk about it, the more they understand, the more comfortable they'll then become to
correct.
continue talking about it. And then the more people will know. And that's been my goal. And that's hopefully
Yeah, and I think like we like I use again my son Luke and his mates an example. You know, to be able to educate that age group is quite actually easy because they aren't in the headspace of wanting to get pregnant, so they don't have a fear about hearing this
Mm,
this 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 sort of educational awareness stuff. They don't have a fear of it because they're actually not in the headspace of getting pregnant. So, but they will retain the information. Like they
mm.
will take it on board, like I said, like they do with sex ed at school or not smoking, no drugs, all that sort of stuff. It's like I grew up with the first lot of the AIDS ads, and they had the Grim Reaper on, and they plastered that everywhere. And you take notice, it sits in the back of your head whether you need to use that information or not. But that's what I feel like Tim and I are trying to do is to educate those that aren't in the community, because
Mm.
they're the ones that we need to understand what's going on. We don't need to educate the people who've been through it or raise
Yeah.
awareness. They understand, and their families hopefully understand. So,
Mm.
with our documentary, that's what we interviewed people like yourself and people from the CRE, obstetricians, and lots of different bereaved families. And then again on my run, they were interviewing midwives and that. So, it's not, the documentary is not just me running slowly. It's, running is my story about my loss, but the documentary is hopefully going to educate people that come to watch it about how bad it actually is, like how prevalent it actually is. And even, I've had people that still come up to me down my local coffee shop and they tell me now, like, oh, my friend's just had a stillbirth baby, or my friend's sister's nephew, or, like, so that
Everyone
conversation.
knows somebody, they just never talk about it.
Correct. And I feel like, just in my local coffee shop now, which is quite popular, I think we took,
they do
did
good
we
coffee
take
there.
you there? Yeah. So I feel like at least I've educated my community for people that didn't know, and especially some that are like my age and, they really hadn't been touched by it in their family, so they really didn't have any idea. And they're the people that are coming to me now and they're not feeling uncomfortable telling me this story. So I think, like, if we can just get that all out over Australia, well, that'd be good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think I want to talk about your running and how that helped you. I like it how running helped you sort of heal and grow through that suffering and that pain that you went through. Is that something that you've been doing? Were you doing running before Celeste as well, or is it
No,
after?
so I used to play tennis growing up. I was always very sporty, so I was always playing something, but hated running. Like, it was not like I used to go tennis training and hate the warm up, basically. So it was after, so Luke was about 18 months old. So he was born the following year after Celeste, and he was about 18 months old. And we used to live at the top of this hill in Seacliff, and we'd go down the beach. And I just remember him, when he started to run or waddle, and I'd be puffing up this hill to get home, and it was very not me. So from part of suffering how I was, I had put on weight and then got pregnant again, put on weight, and I wasn't doing any exercise, and which is quite common when you're not feeling fantastic mentally. And I just was at the chiropractor one day, and there was this card for a personal trainer on the reception, and I picked it up and I got in the car. Tim picked me up, and I got in the car and I said, I think I want to ring this personal trainer and just do some one-on-one, because I'm not a gym person. I don't like gyms. And obviously with the headspace I was in, that would be even the last place I'd want to go at that time. And so I'm not a very, I'm quite an introverted person, and I hate making phone calls. It's my one thing I get anxiety about, is talking on the phone. Anyway, I made this call with Tim by my side, and so I made this time to go and see this lady. And then my next thing I said to Tim was, oh, I hope she's not some little dolly bird that's like this little bit chick. Like, I want someone that's like, strong, and I don't know, like I had this vision of what I wanted, because I grew up a bit of a tomboy as well. So when I was younger, so I was wanting this like person that actually looked like they were sporty, or what, like a athlete, I guess. Anyway, I got what I wanted. She was like a 6-foot Amazon woman, and she was wonderful. And she's a very close friend of mine today. So I started with her, just really gently on the treadmill, really slowly. And then I trained with her for probably 2 years, just 3 sessions a week, one-on-one. It was more like, yes, I was doing exercise, but it was a bit of an outlet for me too, because she was that type of person. She was easy to talk to.
Mm.
And then one day she said to me, oh, she used to run a boot camp at 6 o'clock in the morning on the beach. And she said, Joe, you'd love the boot camp. You should give it a go. And I'm like, oh, I'm not sure about getting up that early. So anyway, sure enough, she worked at it and I ended up at boot camp. And that's when I started to probably do a bit more running. And then it was such a great little community that she had that she started getting us to do events. So, like City to Bay or those sort of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, count me in. And that's probably where the running started. But then it wasn't until, that was fine, but it wasn't until I got off the roads and onto the trails. And that eventuated by Beth again organising us to go to an adventure race in Lorne. And so I did my first trail run over there, like in an event. Obviously, I trained on the trails. But when I got back, I just said to Tim, I just found it like a totally different experience. It was.
Is that when you started to love running?
Yeah, and finding the peace that I was looking for. So even though I'd been running for a couple of years, with that group, along the beach, the coast, the Esplanade, I was just doing it because I guess I was getting out and meeting new people, but I wasn't gaining that mental clarity or anything from it, I wouldn't say. It wasn't until I got the trails. So then it just built up from there, Rob. Like I was doing next minute I'm signing up for a 36K race up a hill, and then I just wanted to run further and further because I was getting this, I just felt lighter. It's hard to explain. When I was out on the trails, I felt light. I thought about my daughter a lot. But my head would just feel clearer and light. That's the only way I could explain it. And so then I just started running further and further until it got to the stage where I would get Tim to drop me off on a trail, and then I'd bring him up a few hours later when I had finished, and he would pick me up and take me home because I just, I was like, I don't know how long I'll be. And and then I could run anywhere from one place to the other and he could pick me up. But it's just the things that I've experienced out on the trails. I see a lot of signs of my daughter, I feel, on the trails. And I guess too, in a way, the signing up for the hard stuff is part of pushing my body, challenging myself and pushing my body, because I feel I still have that guilt of feeling like I let my daughter down, like it was my body that failed because I had blood clotting and I couldn't feed her and all those sorts of things. So I think part of my doing these hard runs, what people call crazy, is part of me trying to prove a point that my body can do stuff. So that's how I got into running anyway, and now I just love running.
No, that makes complete sense to me. I find a lot of, I don't like running. I still hate it, but I find
I have a girlfriend like that. She runs and she hates it every time.
I think that's why I find that it works, because I'm not enjoying it and I'm suffering so much on these runs. I can't think of anything else. It clears the head completely of any sort of crap that I was worrying about, or things that I was sort of just focusing on way too much. It sort of puts everything into perspective. And like you say, I see Billy a lot. We not by any sort of intention of our own, is that the dandelion has become quite a big thing for us when it comes to Billy, just because and we didn't know this at the time, but that the dandelion was sort of linked to baby loss and stillbirth in a way.
Yes.
But when Billy was born, because we didn't know that she was gonna, it was only, she was 35 weeks, so we hadn't planned on going to the hospital.
Yep.
We didn't have any clothes for her when she was born, and so my mother-in-law went to our place and grabbed whatever onesies that were in the drawer that we had ready to go, and then
Yep.
she brought one, and it was covered in dandelions
In line. Yeah.
patterns.
Yep.
And then after we got photos back from the Heartfelt Foundation, we realized that my wife was wearing a T-shirt that also had
Had
dandelions on it.
wow. Yeah.
And then we just, yeah, we see them all the time, and like even
Mm.
my son now, he will be out for a
Points them
run,
up.
or he picks them up and he's like, "We'll take this home for
Yeah.
mum," and he
Yep.
brings them home for mum all the time.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's become a bit of a symbol for us, which is
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it's, and I find on my runs that I've done, it's always like so day one, when I left day one, November last year for my run, Justin, uh, the videographer, Justin,
Mm.
was following me, and we were about 10K in, and we're on this track, and he was behind me filming, and he said, "Oh, Shell," he said, "there's a butterfly following you." And I was like, straight away, I was like, oh my God. So, you know, for me, that was like her checking in, like, this is the start of my run. And I had
Mm.
moments at times where I had that. And then when I was in the Warrnambool Hospital having an MRI after everything sort of went a bit pear-shaped, um, Ash told me after, because they were allowed to come in and film, she said she was going to lining up to take a photo of me, and Ozzy could see himself in the reflection, so he sort of crouched down, and all of a sudden there was a butterfly at the window of the hospital,
Oh wow.
and they told me that after, and I'm like, oh my God. And Ash said she was, coming in to check in on you to make sure you're all right. And it's just little things like that. You're always finding signs, and
Mm.
um,
Yeah,
yeah, like it. Yeah,
it's so
it's
amazing, especially since
yeah,
like like butterflies. I don't know about you, but I'd never see butterflies. Like it's rare for a butterfly to just be flying around unless they go
yeah.
to the zoo or
I
something.
I mean, I have seen them, especially on that run last year. In the most random of places, and always possibly when I needed it, or um,
Mm.
yeah, like it was. But it's amazing too, also, like, because when you've connected with people in the community, in the stillbirth community. So Rena up in far north Queensland. So kookaburras are her thing. That she has a kookaburra. She lives on a farm. She lost her son Henry, and this kookaburra comes and visits every morning and sits on the
Mm.
wire, and that's Henry. And I learnt this over time. And um, on one day when I was struggling along a highway with all these big trucks going along, and uh, it was raining and whatever, and I just had this kookaburra. I looked over, and I'm in this most random of spots, and I was like, oh, Henry's checking in to see how I am. So it's like, I've learned all these through all these connections. And so I was using that as well on the run, that like all these little angels are coming in to check on me, to
Mm.
keep giving me that
Give you that
will to
boost.
keep going. Yeah, yeah. So I think they're the things we've got to keep holding on to, don't we?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good way to segue into your run, which we should clarify for people that you ran almost 600 kilometers in 12 days, 11
Yeah.
days.
So
Did
yeah, it
last year
was
for the Stillbirth Foundation.
yeah. So it was I didn't quite. I planned I wanted to do the 1,000 Ks to Port Melbourne, but from starting in Adelaide, but my ankle decided otherwise. But yeah, so I think, yeah, it was 12 days, and yeah, 600, just under 600 Ks. And
Mm,
unfortunately,
that's still a lot.
I mean, I started off really, like my longest day was 60 kilometers. That was day 3. and then my ankle from a really insignificant stack on a trail on day 2, it just started to niggle away. So then we made, because I always had room to, like, it was 1,000 kilometers I was running, but the actual distance, if I'd made it, was 1,042. So I always have 42 Ks up my sleeve to drop somewhere along the way.
Mm.
So when my ankle started playing up, we made the decision that we'd stick to 50K days minimum, and just see how I go. And if I can sneak an extra K here and there, I would. So yeah, it was, like, I look back and it all went so quickly, Rob. Not at the time, but I broke them down into park runs. So, I would say just 5K, every 5K.
Mm. That's a good way to
And
map it out.
that's all I focused on. And Tim would drive the RV ahead 5K, and that would be, I'd run to the RV, and obviously you could spot that a fair way away. So it was always a good thing to keep running. But it was an amazing run. I met some amazing people through the regional areas, very generous people, and a lot of people that are part of the stillbirth community.
Yeah, I
I
saw that
even,
you met Matt in Warrnambool and his
yes,
family.
so I met Matt and another lady, Sarah, who does a lot in the space of like fertility, miscarriage. So with the Wish Collective, she's called. So Matt
Oh
and
yeah, I know
Sarah,
them.
yeah.
Mm.
So Matt and Sarah really were big supporters. Um, and very helpful in Warrnambool. Unfortunately, I didn't get to run with Matt because that was when I had to pull the pin. So I have promised him I'll go back there, and we were just discussing actually a couple of days ago about getting the documentary there, and perhaps I can do that section that I didn't get to do with him. So
That's a good
that'd be
idea.
nice. Yeah, that'd be nice.
I could try. I'll try and meet you there.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been wanting to head up that way. So yeah, but Matt does some pretty big runs as well, so he'll be able to keep up with you.
Yeah, he's a pretty good runner, and he like yourself has to juggle it in around the young kids and work
Mm.
and everything. So it's he does well. But no, they were great. The community in Kingston, in SA, and Mount Gambier was huge. Had a footy team come out and run with me in Mount Gambier. That was fun, and got to meet one of the dads that had lost his son, uh, Boston, to stillbirth. So and he was I don't know, probably only late 20s, I'd say. So I had a really good chat with him as we were running along, which was nice. Um, and then this is a good one. So I don't know if you've ever heard of a place, Tantanoola. It's
No.
I think it's got about 10 people that live there. In fact, the young lad from Essendon, you're an Essendon supporter. The young
Yep.
lad from Essendon that debuted on the weekend, that's where he's from.
Oh really?
Anyways, yeah, it's a farming community. So it's just outside of Mount, it was between this side of Mount Gambier for us. So they have I don't know, it's like a myth, the Tantanoola tiger. And I was running with my girlfriend at that stage, who used to be in the police force down that area. And she said, "Oh, you're going through Tantanoola?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, I hadn't thought about it." And she said, "Oh, yeah, we've got to go. I'll take you to see the Tantanoola tiger." So we diverted off the road just so that we could go to Tantanoola, which is probably a town of 15 people. But we went into the pub. They let us in. It was early. The publican was outside. Not only gave us donations, showed us the tiger, but also this lady came from out the back who was probably my age and asked what we were doing. And as soon as I said, she said, "I had a stillbirth daughter 23 years ago." So here in
Oh
this
wow.
little community of not very many people, there we go, and I just felt like I was meant to be diverted to go and have that conversation with her. So
Yeah.
I had
Definitely.
some amazing experiences like that on my run. which yeah, which for me personally, they're the things that made it. It was meeting all these people and giving them an opportunity to tell their story. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's such a good thing to do because what I've noticed in my experience, whenever I've spoken about Billy or stillbirth in general, if someone's there that has gone through it, you can see it in their eyes. They're like they want
yeah,
to open up. They
yeah,
want because they've never had a chance to do it before, and they can
yeah,
speak to
absolutely,
someone, and they let it out. And it's like
yeah,
a lot of the times they tell you things that they've never told anybody else, and
yeah,
you can just see like the weight being lifted off them from just speaking those words.
yeah,
It's such an amazing experience, and I think that's why it's so important is that your run that you were doing and this documentary that's coming out next month. I think I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing it. Maybe we can get that nationwide.
yeah.
Get it
Well,
get it into streaming like Ned Brockman. Have you seen his
well,
documentary that got put out on
yeah,
Netflix?
yeah, on Netflix.
You got to do that.
Um,
Get it out there.
I well, Tim is working hard on that. We so obviously we're having the premiere here in Adelaide at Glenelg at Event Cinemas, but Tim is hoping to he's working with events to hopefully try and get it into the capital cities, or I think events have got, he said, like 140 cinemas around Australia. So that would be a good start. Um, and then also we will be taking it back. So like Mount Gambier, Warrnambool, Renmark, so some larger regional areas. But again, Rob, it's all about funding.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
although our ticket sales will go towards, covering costs that we may have to incur. So like, the cinema at Glenelg, we have to pay for the use of the cinema. Like it's not like obviously we've got a charity rate, but Tim and I have spent, close to over $100,000 this past 18 months on this whole uh, awareness campaign.
Mm.
So for us now, it's about getting the funding so that we can get this out everywhere. And if our ticket sales can cover that, then that's fantastic. Um, but yeah, we're hoping to get it as far as possible. Um, and especially the regional areas, because the regional areas is pretty critical. They don't get very well looked after at all. So
Mm.
yeah,
I think
keen to
it's
get out there.
it's I think the level of care that they get isn't up to the standard that they should be.
No, and some of them have to travel a long way just to get their maternity care and yeah, it's just hearing those stories that yeah, I sort of you don't ever say you're lucky, but I think at least we're in the city and we had our family around us and things like that. But yeah, some of the stories that you hear in those regional areas is quite horrific.
Mm. Yeah, it puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? And it sort of makes you sort of
Mm.
look for the gratitude in those sort of spaces, especially like yeah, I think it was just yesterday I saw someone post online. They're from the US and they lost their wife and their baby during
Oh,
labor,
yeah,
but he's in the US, so he got a bill for $100,000.
yeah. That's
It's
just
like
criminal. That's
imagine getting
criminal.
that after losing everything that you've
Yeah,
like losing everything and then getting a bill
yeah,
for 100 grand to pay for it.
yeah. It just doesn't make
Ridiculous.
sense, does it? It's illogical. Like it's yeah. I don't. It doesn't make sense.
Mm.
But unfortunately, yeah, you hear those stories and they are out there, and yeah, I don't know. All we
It's
can
it,
do, Rob, is keep chipping away.
yeah, yeah. I think I think the more that we talk about it, and the more we end up helping the caregivers as well, because there's still a lot of education that
Mm,
midwives and doctors need, and the disconnect between the doctors and the patients when it comes to loss as well.
yeah.
I was I can't remember where it was. Someone was doing a present talk on their loss, and they mentioned that when they went in for a subsequent pregnancy after their loss, they told their midwife that this wasn't their first baby, that they'd already lost their
Yep.
son,
Yep.
but they had to terminate for medical reasons
Okay. Yep.
their son, and
Yep.
it was, I think they said it was like 36 weeks, so it was very, very late. And
Yeah.
the midwife, when she told the midwife that, the midwife said that she should be in prison for murdering her baby.
Oh, yeah, that's
And I
terrible.
was like, okay, well, I would have just left the hospital at that point and just gone somewhere
Yeah,
else. Like, you
no,
can't have people
that's
like that.
it's just, but that's the thing. I think it's like, I think back to that midwife we had. She was just old, like, I don't know, she's probably not even alive now. She was pretty old back then. And I think, unfortunately, that's who I got on the day. I was in a private hospital
Mm,
as well. And unfortunately, that's who I got on the day. And she was probably pretty old school. And who knows, she might have even experienced herself and was one of those mothers that doesn't know where her child is. Um, is buried or anything. Like you just don't know people's stories as well. But I mean, there is my other thing is I remember so after Celeste was born, I got ill a couple of weeks, or probably wasn't a couple of weeks later, but I got ill maybe a week later. It was like flu symptoms, and anyway, I had to go back in for a procedure because all the placenta hadn't come out, and I was basically getting an infection. And I just remember coming out of recovery hearing this, like I guess they were nurses talking, and one nurse had said, "Oh, she's had a stillborn baby this week or last week or whatever," and then something else, and then next minute, believe it or not, I was wheeled into like what I can only imagine is a broom cupboard. So I
mm,
was put in this, because all of a sudden they were panicking that, I don't know, maybe there were babies being born. I don't know what was going on. I was still, coming out of anesthetic, but when I come to, I look around and I'm not in recovery in the normal area. I'm in like in this, I don't know, shoved in a cupboard, which was their
yeah.
way of dealing with me not having to deal with other stuff, I guess. But you think, where would they even think to? Why
Yeah.
would they put someone in a cupboard?
Yeah. I think that's why the importance of having that consistent sort of bereavement care
Yeah,
training across the board
yeah,
is, and that's something that, like, that's why it's so, like, it's so frustrating that, like, the Stillbirth CRE and stuff are, like, not getting their funding, because they're the ones that implement and give these training to the hospitals.
yeah.
And it's just so
I
it's
mean, Tim and I are quite devastated about that. We, had quite a bit to do with the CRE. Went up there and spent a bit of time with them all, and they work hard. And they have really done some great research, and some of it's off the back of what's working, in the UK or the Netherlands or places like that, and there's real evidence to support funding these programs.
mm,
Um, but unfortunately, nobody in Parliament at the moment has had a stillborn baby. I think that's what it boils down to. So we don't. The funding's not there, and just as a bit of a sweetener, we'll throw a bit of bereavement care. To think that that's, but the cost um, to the health system is substantial. We could be with implementing these programs and saving 20 to 30% of these babies, these preventable stillbirths. We will be reducing the requirements at the other end. So,
mm.
it's quite frustrating that they're not into preventative, they're into like putting band-aids on. And yeah, it's got to stop because, as you know yourself, these rates haven't changed since my daughter was born.
Mm.
The rates haven't changed, so it's nothing's being done. And I think in my documentary you hear me getting a little bit angry about that.
I think that what in the documentary, what was the is there a particular moment in the documentary that you think is going to be something that's going to sit with people the longest?
Well, to be honest, Rob, I don't want to see the product until the premiere. So I sort of want to see it the first time there, but I've seen snippets, and I think it's going to be really impactful. I think people are going to go away, regardless of whether they've come to watch the running part or just supporting our family or to learn about stillbirth. I think everybody is going to take something away from that. And they're definitely going to take away the fact that not enough is being done, and that everyday people are being affected by this. It's not, it doesn't discriminate. Yes, it's obviously higher rates in Indigenous communities and so forth, but at the end of the day, it doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anybody. So I think it's going to be impactful. I think people will go away probably needing some tissues as well, but I think they will go away, and it'll stick with them.
Well, I hope it does. I
hope they tell everyone so that then they all come and watch the next time.
Yeah, no, that absolutely. I think how do you think you're going to go watching it? Is it going to be hard for you think?
I think I've been asked this a lot over the last year. How did I go listening to interviews? How did it go, like at the lunch where you came, Celeste's birthday last year, where you came over and spoke? But because of my journey through stillbirth, I, unfortunately, I will say, learnt to shut off my emotions when required. So I have this ability to probably almost, people might think I'm a bit cold, but it was my, I guess, like security. So I learned over the years, because I couldn't talk about it. I just I don't know, I have this, it's a natural thing, and it's like my emotions shut down. So I'm more of a private griever. So, something could happen when I'm on my own, or I just, things like that. But yes, there'll probably be a tear or two, but I think for me, it'll all come out when I get home, because I don't.
You let it out.
Yeah, I don't purposely try to shut my emotions off, but that's just something that's as a result of what I've been through.
I think that speaks to a lot of people that have been through a similar experience. Like me, for instance, that's something that I've learnt to do through this whole experience, is learning that I need to be able to control my emotions without letting it dictating my behavior or changing the way that I'm doing things every day.
Yep.
And that's the only way that I've learned any of that is because of the loss of Billy, and knowing that if I don't learn how to shut these things off at certain times, then I'm not going to be able to
continue,
be productive and do the things that I want to do.
Yep.
So I think
Totally.
that must be like a trauma response to the everything that's happened.
Yeah, I think, although I wish sometimes I could be a little bit like Tim, so Tim can sometimes, his emotions will come out, and I think sometimes I wish I could let it come out when it needs to, because sometimes, when you push them down, then they won't necessarily come straight back out when you walk away. And I feel like that's weight that you're pushing all this stuff down and holding on to it, and it's stress, and it's not good for you. So sometimes I wish that I could just let it out, but then I don't know, I've learned, I've had to learn for so many years to just get on with it and pretend that everything's okay. So it's just not something I can control. Like, it just happens. I don't purposely set out to put that sort of dull thing on.
And that's when you go for a run, and that's you can release it that way.
Yeah. and I talk to the kangaroos and, things like that. So I think he's this crazy woman again.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but no, it's good.
So it's after the documentary's released, I have to ask what's your next endurance endeavor? You got anything
Well,
in the works?
well, I went over to
Because
Pace.
you just did that really big
Well,
hilly marathon.
yeah, I did the Hamilton Island one and
Yeah.
scooped up second for my age group there. That was a bit of a bonus.
Yeah, amazing.
Bit surprising. And then I was meant to pace my girlfriend, so I'll know what I won't be doing next. So my girlfriend, so I've done the 100K in the Blue Mountains a couple of times with Ultra Trail Australia, one as ambassador for the Stillbirth Foundation. And my girlfriend, they had the inaugural 100 miler this year at the UTA. And so she signed up for it. She's about 20 years younger than me. But she said, can you come over and be one of my pacers for the nighttime section? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Anyway, I went over there and very inspiring stuff watching all these people run 160 kilometres through some really tough terrain. But I walked away saying to Tim, yes, it was very inspiring, but I have no desire to run 160 kilometres in one stint because
Is there a time limit? Like 24 hours or something like that?
44 hours they get, but it's over
Mm.
7,500 meters of climbing.
Jeez.
And it is, I mean, one of my girlfriends from Sydney, she did it just under 35 hours and she's a very experienced trail runner. And she's still recovering. So I don't mind anything up to 100K in one day because you're only going into one night. But seeing these people, going into 24, 30 hours, it's like, no
Non-stop.
thanks. I think I'm too old for that. But I have been thinking, because one of the other things I wanted to try and do, because every other charity does it and we don't with Stillbirth, is I would love to, get a fun run happening once a year, like an annual fun run as a fundraiser. And, maybe it can just be like 6K for the 6 babies. So,
I've got a
I've
racetrack that'll be interested in doing that.
yeah. So I've got that, like, I thought if we can get, that might be something that we can work on down the track to be an Australia-wide thing, on one particular day of the year.
Mm.
But for me personally, I'm turning 55 this year in November because I always do these runs on my birthday. So I have had chats with Tim about perhaps a 55K run through the Adelaide Hills might be something I'd like to do on my birthday. So that might be the next best thing. And I'll work out how I can raise some money from that. So yeah, but
That's a good number to run on, I think. 55 is
yeah,
still a huge distance.
yeah. I did when I turned 50, my birthday fell on a Saturday, I think it was, and I managed the girlfriend that I just supported in the Blue Mountains, she was living in Adelaide at the time, and my personal trainer that I spoke about earlier, I sucked them into running 50Ks through the Adelaide Hills with me on my 50th birthday. And I managed to raise over $5,000 that day for Stillbirth Foundation. So yeah, I'm sort of tossing up something like that. But
To get people to sign up and run with you on your birthday. They can
well,
pay an entry
yeah.
fee to go towards the foundation.
Well, and they're the types of things because I sort of, like I said before, how much money can I keep asking from my family and friends when they've been so supportive this last 5 years? But if you're getting them like signing up for something and getting them to do something, well, that's a little bit different. They're getting something sort of back for it, aren't they? Apart from that good feeling of making those donations. So, but yeah, watch this space, Rob. We'll see what
Yeah, no, I will.
see what I come up with because I don't think long distance running days are over, even though I told my mother they were.
Oh, that's great. I think, yeah, I think it'll be a good a good 55Ks. I think there'll be a lot of people that'll be wanting to get involved. I can see you like that, you know, that scene in Forrest Gump where he's running up that running
Yeah.
that hill and there's all those people behind him. It'll be like that.
Yeah, I actually, speaking of that, so in Mount Gambier with the footy club that I spoke about, so there's a very, I think I've had it in a trailer actually, footage that Justin took of me in the middle of all these guys that were sort of like behind me. And I think that's quite impactful. There's 5 of them wearing the Stillbirth Foundation tops, and then the others are
Mm,
wearing their footy Guernsey. And then there was my son, and some of his mates came up to Mount Gambier for the weekend and ran with me as well because it fell on a weekend. So that, as soon as I saw that video footage, I thought, oh wow, that took my breath away. Because to me, here's this older woman um, with all these like 20 something year olds, males running behind her, I think is very impactful
mm.
for this day and age because, yeah, I think it's,
It
you
shifts
know,
it
it's,
shifts that message that it's not just a women's sort of issue.
yeah, correct.
It's an everyone's issue. Like everyone, it
Yeah.
affects everybody.
And it's okay to talk about this as a male. Like it's,
Mm,
it's, yeah. Yeah. And I think it was the lad that was with me, actually, the closest to me in that footage was the lad that I was, from memory, was the one I was having a conversation with. So, yeah, when I saw that, it's, yeah, I thought that brought a tear to my eye.
mm. No, I think I've seen that on the trailer. It looks, yeah, it does have a lot of impact when you see it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm definitely, yeah, I am. I'm looking forward to seeing the documentary. I won't be able to make it over to Glenelg, but I'm sure that it will be here sometime in the
Yeah.
future.
Oh, definitely.
Mm,
Definitely. We'll be getting it everywhere. And especially, I'm not, people have said, oh, well, can I see it online? And it's like, well, nobody's going to be seeing it for free at this stage. So,
mm,
it's about um, getting it into areas and having people actually come and sit and watch it as a movie, not be distracted or, they really need to be um, paying attention. So
mm.
I think it's that, to get the full impact, I think to be sitting in a theatre is what's going to
Yeah.
help.
I think it's like it needs to be an event where and I think it's the the format that you're doing in at the cinema is you're doing a Q and A as well afterwards. Is that
Yeah,
right?
so we have about half an hour, yeah, for that
Mm.
after. So yeah, it'll be a little bit of that, and I think, yeah,
It's like what they do.
for
It's like they do
those,
that in Hollywood. They do that in Hollywood
yeah.
when they premiere movies.
So again, outside my comfort zone,
Yeah.
I'll be sweating, but I've had to learn to do a lot of that this past 18 months. I was doing a lot of things that I really didn't feel comfortable with. Like people used to say to me, "Oh, it's so hard, you're running all that way." And I thought running is the easy part. Like I know I can actually do that. It was
Mm.
all the other bits and pieces that, putting myself out there. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
getting up on
my,
stage and talking about Celeste
yeah,
and
it's not my, I'm more a one-on-one person. I'm not, yeah, I just, yeah, it's tricky. That's why I bring Tim along because he's really good at networking and, like, um, yeah, is a lot more comfortable doing that. So that's, I think, we complement each other. We bring good different
mm,
skills to the team. So yeah, he's my rock to for lots of things, not just um, this journey that we've been on together, but helping me deal with a lot of other things to get
mm.
this message out. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we'll I've got one final question for you before we
Hmm.
before we wrap it up.
I'm
So
not
what's
scootering with you. No.
So I'll have a couple of scooters there just in case. What's one thing that you hope people will take away from hearing your story?
I honestly hope that they take away. Well, I want them to go away and talk about it. I want them to go away and tell their network or tell their friends and their family that they saw, this film that they've seen and what they learnt, like just the awareness. Obviously, I don't expect them to go away and understand stillbirth like in depth, but I want them to be able to go away and have learnt stillbirth happens, it's prevalent, and more needs to be done about it, so that when the time comes, when next time we ask for support, that word's got out there further, that people actually will jump on board earlier, or go, oh, yes, I have heard about that. And yeah, I think it's just that awareness. If they go away and tell one or two people, then it's done its job, I think. So yeah, that's what I hope.
Awesome. I hope that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being the first person on the podcast, and I hope I can do more of these, and I hope you'll come back on in the future. So yeah,
you should. I think you've just got to keep getting out there, Rob, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that will want to tell their story and help you with your journey as well, in doing that, because you're doing a good thing, and you just need to keep chugging away. There's Timmy. You just need to keep
going.
You just need to keep, like Tim and I often say, on the days you get frustrated when you think nobody's listening, there are people listening. They might not be like interacting with you or whatever, but people are listening, and we've just got to keep doing the hard stuff, because if we don't do it, who's going to do it at the moment?